Hello and welcome to the Refs Need Love 2 podcast, a show where we get real, raw, and behind the scenes on the toughest job on the pitch, the referee. Today, I am interviewing another special guest, Matt Bernard, who is the South Central General Manager for U.S. Club Soccer. Not U.S. Soccer, not U.S. Youth Soccer, U.S. Club Soccer. U.S. Club Soccer's mission is to foster the growth and development of soccer clubs throughout the United States, creating the best possible environment for players and ages in every club. This should be interesting. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad to have you here. I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation. Again, I have to tell you, when we first connected, I was wondering, okay, I've heard of U.S. Club Soccer, but I really am not quite sure what they do. Would you mind telling my audience, who is U.S. Club Soccer? What do you guys do?
Sure. We are a national body underneath the U.S. Soccer Federation. We are primarily in the youth space, although we do have some adult. We have leagues in almost every state. We have everything from grassroots at the very, very basic level with 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, all the way up to the ECNL is a league that's sanctioned underneath our umbrella. The National Premier League is one of our one of our big leagues that we have across the country. And ultimately, it's a group that was created 20 plus years ago by a bunch of soccer directors who wanted to find a better way to kind of cut some of the bureaucracy and get soccer people in charge of soccer. And so it's grown from that small seed to a group now where we have probably 20 full-time employees across the country, and a significant chunk of the youth soccer landscape under our umbrella.
I got to tell you, before we were doing this podcast together, I had no idea that ECNL and the ECNL, first off, ECNL was run by U.S. Club Soccer. I thought it was just some other organization, some other club. And then you also mentioned the National Premier League. Is that the same thing as National League when I hear that said?
No, we'll start to, as you said earlier, we'll start to divide the alphabet soon and make it a little bit more clear.
Tell me.
So U.S. Club Soccer, we sanction the ECNL. So the ECNL is run underneath our umbrella. They register through us, but ultimately it's a league that's run by another group of soccer people. The National Premier League, similarly, we have 17 of them, I think, currently across the country in different states. They are run at the local level by people in that market. And so for us, we're a little bit more over the top of it, helping in whatever way we can from a development business or soccer-wise or referee education or coach education. But one of our biggest kind of pillars of our group, of our company, is that we want to let local people make local decisions, and we want soccer people in charge of those decisions.
So I hear that. I think one of the things that's been interesting for myself, so I'm, yes, a referee now and have been doing it for 10 years, but I was a soccer coach for a while. My son was a soccer player and played in the U.S. Development Academy for a few years, and then participated in the alphabet soup of leagues, right? And there's so many different leagues out there, so many different levels. Just here in my own state of Georgia, I feel like on a weekly basis, I could be asked to ref in just at the youth level, just at the academy level. I feel that there's about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 different leagues that I could be refereeing in on any given week, just in my area, like within my 1 hour's drive. So can you kind of help our audience understand, how did we get here? I feel like only like 5 or 6 years ago, it was so simple. Like in my area, there was academy, like 1, 2, and 3. And then there was like classic 1, 2, and 3, which is recreational. And 3 was lower level and 1 was high. How did we get to this point where there's literally, 10 different leagues, for academy in one local market? And I'm sure it's the same all across the country.
Yeah, I used to describe it as, you used to have one church, and now you have, 500 different offshoots of different churches. I think ultimately where it started was when I was a kid. I grew up in Northern California. I live in South Carolina now, but when I was a kid, everybody played in the state association. There was one league. If you played at the competitive level, there were 8 clubs in the Sacramento area, maybe. And now there's legitimately, having just moved from there, 100 plus clubs, all playing more or less in the same league. That's actually the NorCal Premier League, which was one of our biggest leagues in U.S. club soccer. I think where where it's happened is you've had every location is different, right? To think that what works in Georgia is the same that works in deep South Texas, where you're in just a different community and they have different needs. Maybe they have different weather patterns. They can play all year long, or they can only play a 3-month season during the winter, and during the spring or during the summer. I think a lot of the new leagues have sprung out of new people with new ideas. Hey, we want to add this, we want to add this, and people either gravitate to it or they don't. There's no shortage of different leagues anywhere, and it seems that there are more popping up all the time. For us, we have in the U.S. club soccer ecosystem, you have the ECNL, which is a club-based competition. So you have to have your entire club from 13s to 19s in that ecosystem, first teams. Well, many of those clubs decided, well, we want to have something very similar for our second teams. So that's where the ECNL Regional League started as. In a lot of places, not everywhere is the same, but we want to have the same platform for our second teams, to have a club day where, when I worked in an ECNL club, all 6 of your ECNL teams played on the same facility on the same day. And so it created a good environment. It was easier to manage. And I think you have a lot of clubs that have enjoyed that atmosphere. And so then it's, hey, can we do the same thing for our second teams? Or maybe it's clubs that aren't necessarily yet at the level of the ECNL, but their first teams are good enough to play into that regional league. Well, let's start that. So similar in the NPL. The NPL has the National Premier League that we obviously run and sanction, has some are club-based because you have clubs that want to do it. Some are team-based because you have some areas where you have some really talented teams. And maybe as a club director, I only have 3 teams are at that level. Well, I want that. There's so much competition from use my finger quotes, the business side, that there are options and opportunities for teams and clubs all over the country to find them to play in the best possible competition. And obviously USYS has different things. There's they think might work best for them, and it could literally change every 6 months or every year.
Yes, so you just brought up USYS, which is U.S. Youth Soccer. And so I'd like to understand, if you could possibly explain to me, and I'm sorry, I don't understand, I'm naive in this one, is either U.S. Youth Soccer or U.S. Club Soccer more closely aligned with U.S. Soccer, the parent organization, if it is a parent organization, or are you both just affiliated with U.S. Soccer? I don't understand.
Yeah, if you wanted to draw a pyramid or a Christmas tree, if you will, put U.S. Soccer Federation at the top.
Please.
And then the next level down would be U.S. Youth Soccer, U.S. Club Soccer, AYSO, Say Soccer, USSSA, USASA. Everybody is on that next level that has that affiliation to the federation and can offer youth, adult, some are more into the adult space. So, U.S. Youth Soccer has 50 plus state associations, the way that they are structured. And from if you want to look at that comparison to like a U.S. club soccer perspective, we don't have state associations. We're a national body. We trust the people in market. So our leagues in some way are that state association under our umbrella, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I have a colleague who could draw you an incredible organigram, but you would still.
But I mean, seriously. It's one of these things, like a Venn diagram is not going to suffice. Like it's some type of spider chart or something like that nature. I think one of the things that's challenging. So, just like me personally, I'm someone who's like, maybe I'm naive, but I'm an idealist or something of nature. I look over the pond, to England, and I see their wonderful pyramid structure, their county structure and their league structure, and over there, it doesn't seem that they do that, and in other countries, it doesn't seem that they have that kind of structure. There's the organization, the FA at the top, if you will, and then at each uh, age group, there's a club and a team at that club, and they play each year, and they can move up division and move down division. That doesn't seem to be the case here in the United States. It seems to be, if your club has, is in the ECNL, club in ECNL or something of nature, that your club will have an ECL team, a top team that plays in the top division, or if it's MLS Next or something like that, as opposed to the pyramid structure where if you're a really good team and you stick together for a long time, you can keep on moving up to all these competitions. It feels like we have a bit more of a closed system here as opposed to an open, promotion relegation, and maybe that's just a cultural
I mean,
thing.
I think
I don't know.
you're not wrong in some regards. I think every federation across the country is a little bit different, right? Like, I mean, we actually have a group who run a league for us, a National Premier League, who actually has previously, and I believe still has, a league that's very similar to the ECNL in England, because there are so many clubs outside of professional the professional level that they wanted something more,
Right.
and so they were able to create something very similar, and it's really taken off over there. And he's actually replicating it in other parts of the country, which is, it's a little bit the American capitalist model at some level. I think what you're seeing more here now, at least under the U.S. Club Soccer umbrella, is the connection from the National Premier League, the ECNL Regional League, and the ECNL, and you're seeing more promotion. I won't use the term promotion relegation because it's not spot on, but there's more of a pathway. If you do well in one, there's an opportunity to move into another. If you really struggle in one, I actually just got a call the other day that there was somebody who I believe was playing in I think they moved into the regional league, and they realized that their club was just flat out outmatched. And they said, "Hey, you know what? The NPL was probably a better fit for us. We would much prefer to go back into that competition, and perhaps the club who's in the top spot would move forward, would move up." And it worked its way out that way. I know the ECNL is in Texas specifically. There's the regional league, and there's some movement from clubs up or down, if you will. And I think that we're moving in that direction more, but without having a hard, having it be really black and white. I used to run a club, and we talked about promotion relegation actually at the ECNL level in our boys' side in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thing was, are you telling me that I have to win every single weekend with my under 13s to ensure that we don't get relegated or we don't end up in this playoff with the other? Like, at what point in time are we focused on allowing the clubs to have some time to develop players rather than have to win every single moment? And so there's a balance there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my son played when he finished, he played in the National Premier League, which I think it's different from NPL. I think it's a U.S. Youth Soccer affiliated.
The National League. Yes.
Yes, National League, but there's like two levels of it. So I think he was playing in the top one of that, and and they won a state cup, a couple years in a row with that team. I think that the thing that's like challenging as a parent is like, where does that sit as against the ECNL? Where does it sit against MLS Next? Because they are closed competitions. They never get to play each other. We never see the best team in one of these, clubs or leagues, I guess you would say, play against other best teams in the club. And it's interesting, like in my state, like even in my town, we have like 3 different clubs in our town. Well, their top teams all play in different divisions. They never play against each other.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean,
It's crazy.
Like I said, I was a director at a club for a long time, and I had somebody say to us one day, "You're irrelevant here. You're irrelevant in the town. You're a top club, one of the top clubs in the country, but you don't play anybody locally." And, because especially with your top teams. And so there is an element where you want your top teams to play the other top teams locally, and you would presume that you would have success, and you would maybe attract better players or minimally make it really clear why you are who you are. And I think we've now, we use the term regularly. We have teams driving past each other to go play in a game in another league because those teams that are closer to them play in a different league. And so it's a really weird dynamic that I don't think there's no way to really put that toothpaste back in the tube, if you will, because we have so many leagues, and everybody desires something differently. I think that's what a lot of these leagues have sprung up from is, hey, we want to have this. Okay, well, we don't. We want to have this. Okay, well, then I guess we'll go create our own league. And because there are so many options, you have them pop up on a fairly regular basis. And it's frankly, as somebody who works in the industry and who's in the business, it's hard to keep up with on occasion. So I'm now on the other side of it as a soccer parent. And I'm pretty sure my daughter, who's 8, plays in the South Carolina State League. She doesn't play in the U.S. Club League. And she wouldn't care no matter what because she's 8 years old and she just wants to play with her friends. So
Right.
it's, there's definitely some challenges there that, I think it's tough to navigate as a parent and know and as a referee, going back to what you said, we used to have referees show up and say, hey,
Yeah.
what competition is this? Because I need to make sure that that I'm following the substitution rules correctly. Or, and you would have times where referees would have inevitably, you'd be in the middle of a game and they would do something and you're like, hey, no, we can sub on this free kick, or we can't, and they're just, it causes some challenges for everybody.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I definitely want to talk about referees in a second. I've just one last question on this, and I'm sorry to belabor this point or this line of question, but I think it's really interesting. I mean, again, as a referee, I just show up to the matches. Obviously, I need to know what level of competition it is, but I think generally most of the referees I know have been involved in the game as a player, as a coach, as a parent, and so we are genuinely curious as well. It seems, and I'd love to kind of understand from a U.S. club soccer's perspective. I mean, you said it. It's like the soccer. It's become all year. Teams are traveling all over the place, all across the country. It seems that costs continue to rise for every level of player. I mean, every level of player. I mean, I see kids. And I'm not trying to be disparaging in any way, but I see some teams play and they've got like really high level club association, really high level league associations with them. And I'm like, man, that would have been a wreck, a team, a few years ago, and now is in a very high level competition, or at least it's branded as such. And so they're traveling, to numerous tournaments over the year. They're playing year round. I'm sure they're being encouraged to do the extra coaching, and the costs have continued to rise. Is there any movement afoot within U.S. club soccer to work with the clubs to be like, yo, guys, let's dial this back. Maybe not every kid, in every league needs to be doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are very cost conscious as an organization, because we understand how many of the people who work with us and in our entire board, there's actually requirements that they have to be at a certain level of coaching license. They have to be a director in a club or run a league. And so we are all very, very aware of it. I think, the challenge becomes we as a U.S. club soccer, we don't tell people what to do, right? The way we take in our money is through player registration and coach registration. That's how we make the money to run the organization. Similarly, I think what you end up with at the club level is a captive audience who's willing to do whatever they need to do in order to, at some level, stay relevant and stay on that cutting edge. And I, having been a director and a coach for 20 plus years until this last year, I'm now on the other side of it and paying for my daughter's soccer and looking at it from a completely different perspective. Like, okay, we're going to drive 2.5 hours in each direction to play a 60-minute game at 8 years old, or 50-minute game. Like this make it make sense, right? And I get it. Like, you have a state league, and maybe that team that's like in our situation would be Myrtle Beach, where that club in Myrtle Beach doesn't have a lot of competition around them. So for them to get games, they need to have it. So I'm sympathetic at some level, because I think, you don't want to punish a bunch of kids because of where they live. But it's become, I mean, that's probably a really minor drive compared to, I mean, I run, or I'm the general manager for the South Central. So I have Texas, and I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they said, look, to get from El Paso to Houston, it's faster to go to San Diego than it is to drive over there. And my head about exploded, because it doesn't make sense, but it's totally right. And so you have some of these places geographically that they just have to, and they know, because they live where they live, that that's just going to be a thing. But I think, and I maybe rambled off your question a little bit, but I think you have a patch that people are drawn to, whatever one it is, right? It could be MLS Next, could be ECNL, could be NPL, could be, you name, there's so many of them. And I hear people all the time when I read on social media, which one's the best league? Where should my kid be? And it's like, find the best spot for your child. If you want to travel all over the country, knock yourself out. There's great opportunities for that. I coached in the ECNL, I coached in the NPL, I coached in the State Association. There's great people doing great things all across the country. Figure out what fits best. And my daughter at 8 years old is just fine where she's at. And, if she outgrows where she's at, then we'll find a different opportunity for her. But I don't know. I just, having been on the other side of it, running a club for so long, I just have a different perspective now. And I'm totally okay with my kid being in her local league at 8 years old. And I don't care what patch she wears.
Yeah, I think you said it really great. I mean, we are in America, right? Where it just, honestly, I mean, this is we are an entrepreneurial, country. I think we also are a consumer-driven country. There is a lot of keeping up with the Joneses. I mean, we all do it. I mean, I could tell you that, oh, I don't do that. Come on. I mean, you think about, where's my kid playing? Is he having the best opportunity possible to be able to eventually, I don't know, maybe go play in college or something like that? Forget about a college scholarship these days. That's non-existent. But, I mean, like you dream of these things, and you live your life through your kids. You're trying to put them in the best position to succeed. So I get it. Well said. Got it. All right. Now, let's flip the script a little bit, and let's talk about refs. So yesterday, actually, it's funny you talk about teams traveling. I refereed MLS Next between Southern Soccer Academy, which is based here in Georgia, but is a massive club, as you know, as I think over 20,000 kids in their leagues now. I try and really do, when I work any match, and I feel like I have really good match rapport, is I spend time building rapport with the coaches as soon as I show up on that field. And then they played Triangle United, which is from the Raleigh-Durham area, so like a 7-hour drive away. So it was like that. But one of the things that, and getting to know them and asking them about the season and everything, and trying to build, good relations with them. But we know that there's sometimes very strained relationships between referees and coaches. So in U.S. club soccer, I mean, you guys run coaching licenses and coaching training, right? You guys do grassroots, DC, all that stuff. Is there any training for coaches on how to work with referees? And if not, should there be?
Yeah, on the job training most of the time. Yes, I should there be 100%. U.S. club soccer does, almost all of our coaching education now is federation based, right? So it's B license, C license, D license, grassroots, whatever. Those keep changing too. It changes every year. They're adding new stuff or renaming things. Obviously, most of that is about the technical, tactical side of the game. I think if I can think back to the last time I took a coaching course, like there's some referee education or education on how to deal with referees, but not enough. And I think a lot of it is on the fly learning as you go as a coach. And there really is there's a strained dynamic between a lot of coaches and a lot of referees before they even show up. Everybody, I just saw a thing the other day on Instagram where, people are putting up videos all the time, and I'm not technically savvy enough to even call them the right thing. That's actually where I came across you. But somebody posted a video, and it was a bunch of kids walking up to the soccer field, and it was Oh, when you see that ref and you know what kind of day it's going to be, and the kids all throw their bags down and walk away.
Uh,
And I get that they're trying to be funny or trying to be cute, but at some level, what are we teaching? Because now, look, we've all been there. We've all, as a referee, I can imagine you show up to a game and you have a frequent flyer, if you will, somebody that you've dealt with on a number of occasions who is going to be an issue. And you try to come into it a good headspace, but it's inevitable. We're all human. We all know what we all have that pre experience that, okay, here we go again. And I think what you said, the biggest thing about coming in and trying to communicate and humanize yourself, and those pieces are really important for both sides. Because at the end of the day, if I can disagree with you, and if I disagree from a coaching perspective, if I disagree with you and it's funny and you missed that one, you get one, like those, I mean, we have those conversations, and there's a nice back and forth there in a positive way. That's not I think you're terrible at your job and you're a bad human. And I think it rises to that level so quickly. And it just, it's unproductive.
yes, I would agree. Unproductive is a very, very, very good word to describe it. It's interesting. So, a couple of things you said there. Yes. So, as a parent, a soccer parent, and as a soccer referee, sometimes I've seen referees that are bad. Actually, one of the greatest reasons to become certified as a referee is out of spite for bad referees. I'm telling you, I had a young woman yesterday, 26 years old, as a former coach. So she was a soccer coach, and she's now at a point in her life where she's got she stopped coaching. She got really frustrated with coaching just this past year and decided, you know what? I could do a better job than some of these refs that I'm seeing out here. I'm going to go get certified as a ref. And she shadowed me yesterday, and we talked about it. She's grabbing a whistle because she feels like, no, man, I think I could do a better job out there. That's a wonderful reason to become a referee. If you think you could do a better job, come on over. We'd love to see you. I think the challenge for coaches is, and for me as a ref, like there are some referees, like there's one in particular comes to mind. She's just not good, and I have to tell you, I've mentioned it to the assigner, like, hey, the level of matches for this person is probably U10 and below. There's such a shortage of referees these days. Sometimes I feel that referees who are definitely not qualified are being placed into positions to ref higher level matches just because there's so few qualified referees out there. I think the challenge then for coaches is, how do I manage that with my team? Am I going to verbalize it in the match in front of all the coaches and players that a referee is missing calls? Because I would ask you, Matt, when you do that, if you've got a referee who's, I guess not calling fouls the way you see them, or maybe not officiating the match the way you see them, what happens, Matt, when you as a coach starts yelling at the referee in front of everyone? How does that affect the players and the spectators?
Yeah, I was going to say the spectators got to be a part of that equation too. It's inevitable. Your players are going to take on your persona, your energy. My college coach, who is still a very good friend, and when we used to have inter-squad games, and even when I was coaching with him in college, we used to do a thing called bad ref, and he would purposefully blow calls in the middle to just really get under people's skin. And I can say, as somebody who I don't say any of the things I say from like a pulpit. Like I took plenty of yellow cards. I was thinking about it this morning as I was waking up. I had a coach when I was a kid who used to say, "You're in goal. Stop yelling at the referee 100 yards away and trying to tell him what he did wrong. Stand back over there and make saves." And as a 15-year-old kid, you can't really get your head wrapped around it. Now I'm so grateful that person, everything's ramped up now, right? And maybe part of it is what we talked about. Every league feels like it's the most important league in the world on any given Saturday or Sunday. Told me that I was such an idiot. Just be quiet and do your job. But I think the reality is that, and everybody has to win, or they have to, like, oh God, if we drop 2 points, what's going to happen? And it's now kind of reached this fever pitch where you have just craziness happening on sidelines. coaches, parents, players, otherwise, and it's really gotten ugly, and it's taken away so much from the game. And that's like, I know we're going to go here in a second, but I deal with so much discipline stuff, and I used to be that player who all I cared about was winning. I wanted to win. I wanted to compete. Um, but it's now risen to a level where just craziness is happening, and we got to get a handle on it, because it's not just our country. It's happening all over the world, as you saw the other day in Turkey. Again, I think in Turkey, right? I mean, just the chaos that comes from people invading games and really losing perspective on what's going on. And we're watching a kids game, and the world's not going to end if we lose this game.
Yeah, so can you talk about that? I think you've told me that you actually do get involved in disciplinary issues, for clubs, coaches, around the South Central, Southeast. I mean, what are you seeing out there? I mean, can you give me a range of the type of things that you see on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, so the U.S. Soccer Federation basically mandates that anytime there's a referee abuse or assault, it has to be heard by the member. So in this situation, it'd be U.S. Club Soccer. So when those come into us, we have to have discipline hearings, and I unfortunately sit on a lot of those, and that could range anywhere from, verbal abuse is very subjective because it's not well spelled out in the policies. So there have been occasions where, the coach told me I was terrible. Okay, that's not, like, that doesn't rise to the level, and then there's other times where maybe a coach says that they're going to unalive that person, and, like, that now has reached a different level. And so we are regularly dealing with referee abuse and referee assaults, whether it's players to the referees, coaches to the referees. The latest trend has been parents to referees over the last couple of years. And, now in the state of video being everywhere, we get some pretty gnarly stuff that comes in that you're just like, this, you should go to jail for this. And that's we obviously aren't a legal entity, but there are things that they definitely raise to that level. And it's at some level killing the game, and really, it's just really made it challenging, I think, for referees, without question, right? Referees have now become this target, and I think it's maybe post-COVID it got a lot worse. That's just my own anecdotal experience. I think everybody's ramped up, post the couple, well, I was in California, so we were locked away for a long time. Coming out of it, everybody was, free, if you will. But we deal with, I have, we have a coach, coach to coach, coach to player, player to coach, coach to referee, player to referee. I mean, we're dealing with all kinds of different stuff. And, ultimately we have a committee that sits and meets, and we give people their day in court. But we've now gotten to the point, and our leagues have gotten to the point where they're fed up, and the one thing I left out is, and it's become probably the most prevalent issue, is the racially abusive language that we are seeing on a regular basis. It's become normalized at some level. And so we're putting things into place within U.S. Club Soccer, and I think the Federation is as well, to really try to stamp this out, because it's a real issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't do nearly as many matches as many of my colleagues. I had a guy I was with yesterday, a woman I was working with yesterday who had 16 games this weekend. I only had 2 this weekend because I also do high school during the week. But just to give you some idea, I think I've had 2 red cards on my matches for either homophobic slurs or racist abuse just in the last month and a half. So I trust me, I'm very familiar with that issue, and it continues to grow in scale and scope, and it's concerning. You mentioned, if I can, and I'm sorry, just to appreciate it, I mean, the people who listen to my podcast are these referees who are receiving, abuse on and they see it often. Thankfully, I don't get a lot of it. I just have to say I'm very thankful. I've been fortunate in the last couple of years. I know it happens. I think part of it is because I nip it in the bud so early, if there is anything, and that comes with experience. But you said that the referee abuse is happening regularly or assaults are happening regularly. I get people obviously send me stuff because of my channel. Like I get things sent to me almost, if not every day, every other day of some example of either
Hmm.
verbal abuse or physical abuse or something of that nature or assault. I mean, what are you seeing? Are you seeing, is stuff coming in every single weekend? Is it, multiple times a weekend? I mean, what are you getting right now?
Yeah, I mean, as a national body with leagues all over the country, yes, every weekend, minimally. Obviously, there's downtimes of the year. Right now, being that we're towards the end of March, spring league is up and running, and so everybody's coming out, and snow's melting in parts of the country, and people are getting back into games. So we know like there's going to be a heavy load of stuff now coming up between now and the summer. Um, yeah, it varies, and you some places are better than others about turning it in, about sending it in, and we have some leagues who are, um, we get stuff on a regular basis from them because they send it to us, and there's other leagues in the country that they deal with a lot of it internally. Or I talked to a league yesterday in Texas, and they said we haven't had anything that has risen to the level of referee abuse or referee assault in our league. And going back to what we spoke about earlier, some of the people or some of the leagues that have been created and the ECNL, I think that the genesis of the ECNL was this, is that you have people who work in a similar manner, who operate in a similar manner, and you generally know what you're going to get on any given day when you go play against club X, Y, or Z. And when you have that, when you've created that environment, it is, generally that you're not going to have some of that chaos. And that's why you have, when you go back to some of the closed leagues that you referenced, you have
Yeah.
some of these leagues that are like, or some of these clubs like, hey, I don't want that club that I put that's next door to me, because every time we see them, something goes sideways. We don't want to
Yeah.
play them, and so I get it.
I know.
I've run clubs. I've been in that. I've been in that world where when you're going to go play against Club X, something's going to
Mhm.
happen inevitably. And whether it's a bad
Yeah.
dynamic between players or parents or coaches, something's going to go sideways. And I think a lot of people have tried to avoid that rather than try to fix it.
I have one club where I've dismissed a coach from that club. I've dismissed parents from that club. I mean, I will avoid that club like the plague, and somehow they're still in the top league. So that brings me to my last question here on this topic. Matt, is just about the discipline side of this. So there is no national registry for referee abusers or people who are found guilty of referee abuse, or clubs that have parents that are sent off from the pitch more often than others. I, for all the times, and listen, it's not like I send people off all the time. I probably in my 10 years have dismissed 5 coaches, in 10 years. Again, we're talking over 1,000 matches. 5 times have I had to red card a coach, maybe 10 times have I had to send a parent from the pitch. But I had an ECNL game where I had parents who were yelling derogatory things at girls on another team, like yelling hateful, derogatory things. And I wrote a report, and no one ever asked me about that report. I have no idea what happened, no idea to the discipline. It kind of, I put my report in with my assigner, and I guess they send it to the league, and I have no idea what happens to it. Like, can you give us some idea what's the process? Like, if a referee does fill out a report, or there's been a report or a referee abuse, what are the types of penalties that might be out there for either the coach or parents or the club? What happens there?
Well, I think you hit on a topic that we've been talking about recently is you as the referee come across this issue. And who do I send it to? I send it to my assigner. Okay, does my assigner for sure send it to
Right.
the league or the federation? And so I think there's a process. That process has to get sorted out, and we actually are working on it internally, because even we have things that come in, and we, should it be discipline or should it be compliance? Are we talking about a potential abuse, verbal abuse issue of a player, or is it something we should deal with on a discipline level? So I think we are actively working to try to sort that out at the U.S. club level, at least, because the federation we have leagues under us. Well, the federation has all of these things that they're trying to navigate, and I can't imagine it's challenging to be a one size fits all, or to capture all of it. But I think from a referee perspective, anytime that there's an allegation of it's 531-9 in the U.S. Soccer Federation policies, and I should be able to read them to you out of the back of my head because I've been doing this for 11 years now. But basically, if there's an allegation of referee abuse or assault, the league or whoever the league is under, USYS, US Club, we are required to have a hearing or to hand down some kind of discipline if it's warranted. So for referee abuse, the minimum from the federation is 3 games. For referee assault, the minimum is 3 months. And referee assault could vary anything from I touch your shoulder and I've seen that happen, or I accidentally brush against you, to I headbutt you. Mm-hmm. And there's all the things in between. And my understanding is that the federation is working to try to really clarify some of those things, mm-hmm. to make it a lot better for referees and for coaches and players and parents. But ultimately, I think, going back to what you asked, like how do we make sure that this gets to? I believe, and the term is the SRA, right? Is that your state referee assigner?
Yes. State referee administrator.
Administrator, sorry. Your SRAs are the ones that if you have something that you don't think is getting dealt with at the league level, I believe those are your best next step. And I just got an email the other day from an SRA in one of the territories that I deal with, and hey, we haven't seen anything from this league in a long time. Okay, well, listen, here's what we're asking them to do. Here's the discipline matrix that we've created and we're working off of. And they know if there's a abuse or assault claim, then they need to send it to you, and it needs to come to us as well. And we will deal with it at the U.S. club level if it rises to that level. And it most often it does.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you sharing, some transparency on that. It's one of these things that's very much a black box to me as a referee, and I know my fellow referees. I would just say, as we look forward and try to look forward, I think there's a lot that could be gained from, referees maybe sharing with clubs and coaches, hey, here's our perspective on these issues. Here's how you can help us. Here's how we can help you. And I think we need to find a way. Yeah. We need to find the words and the channels to be able to communicate in a way that does not lead to that toxic, like anger-filled, emotion overflowing environment where these types of things happen, because no coach wants to lose their job. No parent wants to be, dismissed or not have the ability to come watch their kid at matches. No one wants to see that, man. So how do we, and I'm being sincere, how do we as referees, how can we possibly help U.S. club soccer and coaches come to a better place so we can eliminate those toxic environments?
I think, start at the club level, right? If you guys, I would imagine many referees are working in their local area, right? Like I said, I was in Sacramento, so we saw very similar pools of referees on a regular basis, and you get on a first name basis with them when you're there enough, right? If I'm sitting out at 6 games at an ECNL weekend, I know Greg, and I know these guys. You just start to get to know people, and I think at some level you can create relationships, right? And they don't have to be your best buddies, but I've had referees come to me and say, hey man, like this guy, nobody wants to do his games. This guy who works for you, no one wants to do his games. Like, you are not getting referees on this guy's games because he's such a jerk. And it's a constant, consistent thing. And so then as a director, you have an opportunity to go and make some corrective actions, or understand that you're gonna be scraping the bottom of the barrel for referees, or if somebody comes up there, or if somebody comes there, they're coming reluctantly because the assigner has now basically said, hey, I'll give you hazard pay to go referee this guy. And I think as referees, you have a lot of power and a lot of ability to at least let people know what's going on, because not every director's there every day, right? You can't see, you got, the club that I worked at, we had 45 teams, and I coached a team and I was gone, and you've got 100 games on a weekend, and inevitably somebody's going to be a bad actor, whether it's a parent or otherwise. And if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. I think at the local level, that's probably the quickest way to solve it. But if you have a frequent flyer or a club that's a constant issue, I think allowing the league and or your assigner and or your SRA know, like, hey, we're having constant problems with this group, and it's going to reach a boiling point at some point. We at US Club Soccer, we have a discipline log that's been going for years and years and years, and I could go access it now, and we are trying to find ways to keep track of frequent flyers, if you will, because we want to not target, but we want to identify who the problems are and know in advance, and then ultimately try to help them find ways to make it better, right? Like we're not in the business of trying to. I hate doing discipline and punishment. We all do. Everybody who works in my role as a general manager, we are all either have run clubs or played collegiately, so we're all soccer people, and so we get on these calls, and it's like, okay, man, I've been there. I've been on the other side of that. I've been the coach who's frustrated. I've been the coach who wants to have a go at the referee, but like you can't get to this point where you kind of lose the plot and you've lost sight of what's important. I know I rambled a little bit there, but I think
No. Listen, man, I hear you. I think yeah, no one wants to, have to discipline someone or anything like that. I will just say one thing you said that I think is so interesting, and I know we got to start wrapping up the conversation here, but I could literally talk about this for hours, and I find it so fascinating. I have to tell you, as a referee, I show up as an independent contractor, and I feel really like I'm on my own. Aside from my little crew of referees that I'm with that day, we're a team together. We come with the third team, but we show up and we leave. And I've never really thought about potentially reaching out to a club director, as you said, and said, hey man, you may want to have a conversation with this guy. Like I would never feel it's my place. My connection, I'm employed, I guess you will, by the assigner, and that's who I communicate with and who I know. But I will tell you, really well-run clubs, and I choose where I ref, right? And I only ref there. And really run clubs have their administrators at the field. Their directors are walking around. They pay to have mentors at the pitch. They pay someone $25 an hour to be there and work with the junior referees and walk around all the pitches to give feedback, whatnot. And they're connected to what's happening on the pitch, and they're gathering that feedback. They're making sure that, hey, ref, you doing okay? Sometimes they have water out for us. One club I go to, they even have snacks. Oh my gosh, snacks. It's like the most amazing things. But they make me feel welcome, and they make me feel like I'm a part of the solution or the extended family. Obviously, I'm not part of that club, certainly not. I'm there as a objective, independent referee, but they make me feel welcome. They make me feel like my voice is heard. And I think the coaches see that too, that they can't, just talk to that referee as if they're completely disconnected, non-human.
yeah,
They're here too, and they treat us like human beings. And man, I tell you, the games go so much better when you are comfortable as a referee, and you can be comfortable making, the decisions you need to make proactively as opposed to reactively. Am I going to get yelled at for someone, by making a decision? It makes you perform so much better on the pitch. You can grow and develop, more positively and quicker as well. It's fantastic.
Well, but you're also when the situation you just described, you're not worried about getting punched in the head. That's
no.
That's the farthest
There's security.
Thing from your mind. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's, when you create that environment for players, for referees, for coaches, where, you're free to fail and you're free to make a mistake, without fear of like, do I have to constantly check my shoulder to make sure nothing's coming from behind me? It creates a completely different environment. And I think, it's, as an organization, we're trying to do more referee support. We have our national Premier League and National Cup finals in Denver every year, where we're there for 3 or 4 weeks at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And this last year, they brought in FIFA level referees to help mentor the referees that are coming in through all of our leagues and from all across the country. Because at the end of the day, if you guys don't get better at your job, then the game's going to, and get more comfortable and continue to have development. The game for me is continuing to ramp up and get better and better and better. I look at the way it is now compared to when I was a kid. Now I feel like a dinosaur. But the game's every player's so far beyond where we were as kids. And I think the level of refereeing has not been allowed to catch up because so many people have been pushed out. Right? There was such a shortage of referees. We all see it. My daughter's had 3 or 4 games this year where she hasn't had referees show up. And thankfully they're 8 and the coaches can manage it and it's totally fine and the parents don't say anything. But we used to have ECNL games where you're like, is there a third referee coming? Is there? What do you mean there's not 3 referees?
Totally.
How is this?
Oh, no,
how is this possible?
trust me.
And
I've been there.
You know, we're at that point now as a country where we have the games growing. People are wanting to play more and more and more. There's 7,000 leagues, as you've alluded to, and there's not enough referees. And, you know, we have to, as a club, as an organization, as a governing body, we have to do more to protect referees, to encourage the game, to encourage the growth of referees. Because if not, then we're going to be playing games with 1 referee, which is completely legal, by the way, based upon the rules. And people freak out when they show up where there's 1 referee. They do it all over the world. But here we expect to have 3 referees on an under 12 game because, God forbid, somebody can't miss an offside, you know, and somebody wins a game.
Yeah, no, I completely hear you. I will tell you, the one caution I have is you guys bring in people like the FIFA referees or these very, very experienced, mature referees who have ref professionally. When I've gone, and I'll just tell you, ECNL weekend, and you bring in that top referee and their advice to the referees, keep your eyes open and keep your ears closed. Because they don't want to have to stop the match to deal with a parent or coach issue or something like that. Right? Because in their world, they've ref pro matches where they've got security and they're getting paid a lot of money to go out there and just drown out the crowd noise because it's a thing of entertainment. But let me tell you this, that parent who's yelling and yelling and yelling and doesn't seem to be getting through to that referee, well, when the words don't work, then it gets physical. And that's when referee abuse occurs. And that's the one thing I find that these very experienced referee mentors or people who have ref professionally don't get is the reality for us on the pitch as a grassroots referee with nothing between us and those spectators, with no one walking us to our cars in the parking lot, is that if you don't nip that behavior in the bud, they will go into what I call the reptilian brain. And all of a sudden my words aren't working. Well, now I'm going to hit someone. It's like a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old wants to do something and they get all upset and all of a sudden they lose control and they start lashing out. It is the same thing. And we need to change. We need to change things before it gets to that place because, as you said, it will be too late. We used to have 140,000 grassroots referees certified in this country before COVID. We now have under 100,000 and the numbers aren't looking good, my friend. They continue to go down. In my high school association, we have 330 registered referees to do 6,800 games in an 8-week period of time. It is impossible. The last game I watched, I was at a game last week. 330 for 6,800 games, and only 250 of them are fit at any given point in time, and they work full-time jobs. The last game I was at, the 3 referees on the pitch, by the way, who I thought did a wonderful job, one of them was 62, one of them was 65, one of them was 67 years old. I kid you not. And I'm still out there and giving it. So, Matt, I just want to tell you, I think there's so much work that needs to be done, and it's not impossible. This is not insurmountable. It is not. I was a rugby referee before I was a soccer referee. Let me tell you, you can have a positive, respectful culture in a highly competitive environment. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, man. And I think if we as the refereeing body, can work closer with our clubs, and our coaches, that we could create an environment, that the parents are a part of too, where there's a culture of respect and tolerance to enable the kids to flourish, because it really is about the kids.
I also think though, Gerson, one of the things, and it was one of the things that attracted me to your social media, was I think the education piece, right? Like
huge.
I sit on my daughter's sideline playing 7 versus 7, and I sit as far away as I possibly can over in the corner by myself because I just want to watch my kid, and I love my kid enough to know that if I start talking to her, it's not going to help her. But there's so many people who don't understand the rules. And many of them played at some level. Even myself, I coached a game last year. I covered a game for my wife, and there was a rule in 7v7 about the build out line that I, as somebody who only coached older teams, didn't know. And so I'm like, referee. And the referee came over. He's like, hey, Matt, like, this is the rule. And I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. I'm a director of this club and I didn't know that. I am so sorry. Thank you for educating me. And so where I was going with that is, I think the video that you're doing on your social media with the scenarios and showing different angles, because I think you put one on there the other day with the tackle that looked like he was just lunging in, and from one angle it just looked like he was late, and from the other angle it looked like he was trying to snap his leg in half. But that's the people don't have that perspective. You only see where you're sitting from, and I think it's really helpful to show these scenarios and to ultimately educate people, because the game, there are subtleties within the game that even somebody who like myself has done it forever. There are things that I learn all of the time. They're like, how did I not know that? I played this game for all my life. I've been and I didn't know that was a rule. Wow. Okay. All right. I got more to do, and the average parent, they don't have anywhere near that knowledge as the coach or the director or even the referee on the field. So I think I've had some very good referees, or I've seen some very good referees who, when they have that parent who's chirping and chirping and chirping, they actually, rather than turning it into a volatile situation, they go over and just explain, hey guys, this is what we're calling, and I've seen that like work like magic. And people just sit down, oh, okay, thanks for the explanation. And if you have an outlier who's looking for an argument or a fight, there's nothing you're gonna do to solve that. And then ultimately, I think putting it on the coaches or the club to go and deal with that problem parent is the only thing as a referee you can do, because the moment you engage with them, where that generally goes towards.
I know it's so hard. I think communication is important, and honestly, Matt, I think this conversation, we could talk about this for hours. I think that the big thing that we all need to know and we need to take away is this can change. This does not have to be our reality. We do not have to see referees abused. We do not have to see these, parents fighting on the sidelines or anything like that. We don't. It should not exist. We can, be the change we wish to create. And Matt, I so appreciate everything that you're doing for the development of the game across the country and specifically in your region, and what you're doing for U.S. Club Soccer. I know the landscape can be, challenging to manage, and that, but hey, that's America. It really is.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is a thing. It's a good thing and a bad thing, and the growth of the game is probably come from that. So again, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do for U.S. Club Soccer. Thank you for your support of my channel. And I'll give you a last word. Is there anything you'd like to just say out there to all the referees who are listening to this podcast?
I'm sorry to the ones that I was a jerk to. I actually moved in next door to one a handful of years ago, and he said, I remember you. And it was somebody who'd refereed me as a youth. We turned out to be good buddies and used to sit in his backyard and have a drink. So Bob, if you're listening, hello. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is thank you, right? Like it's a thankless job a lot of times. And I would say to the referees, and I would also say to the parents now, as somebody who's just a soccer parent, give each other some grace. Right? Let people have the space to not be perfect. Communicate with each other, and for referees, if there's something that rises to the level that you're really uncomfortable with, you got to say something about it, because you're probably not the first one that's dealt with it, and you're not going to be the last one. And I had a referee recently come to me and say, if I didn't address this with this coach, who's going to? Because I can deal with it as a 45-year-old man, but the 22-year-old kid who has him next week, that kid's going to get run over. And, I think that we owe it to each other to do everything we can to make the game better. And it's a slow process, without question. Like, I wish I had a magic wand to make it go fast. But from a U.S. Club Soccer perspective, referees, we appreciate you. We support you. We need you. We're grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to chat with you today, and I appreciate you having me on. And if U.S. Club Soccer, or if I can ever help in any way, let us know.
Excellent, Matt. Thank you so much. And for those, listening this week, I hope you've appreciated this episode of Refs Need Love Too. We cannot exist without the clubs and the coaches and the parents and players who make the game possible, and finding ways for us to be able to improve relationships. That working relationship, that dialogue and communication is so important for our success on the pitch and our enjoyment of doing this job actually on the pitch. I'm very grateful to Matt for coming on and being transparent on the podcast. And again, thank you so much for listening today. Please, if you are, willing, head to refsneedlove2.com, check out the merch that's on the site. Every purchase there gets poured back into this program. Thank you for following me on TikTok and Insta, and all the comments and feedback and videos that you send my way. Again, I can't do this without you. So thank you, everyone. And Matt, again, thank you so much, sir. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.